Hello, this is the Stories Beside channel. I release videos every day for you. Subscribe and click the bell. Don't ruin yourself, son. For the 10th time in the last hour, Miranda asked. She tried very hard to be persuasive. The guy is only 32 years old and still has a long way to go. And instead what to sit at his wife's bedside to change her diapers. William was silent, and his mother took his silence as a sign of agreement. She noted with horror all the changes in her son's appearance. 2 long horizontal lines had furrowed his forehead, and now and then silvery threads twinkled in his hair. And William had a bad habit of pulling his bangs, biting his lips, and tapping his fingers on the table. Neurosis is a clear sign, and all this he no doubt owes to his lying wife. Who could argue that Molly is a good wife? Miranda continued, I hope that a little more. And she manages to squeeze the stubbornness, to make him agree with her arguments. Well, she was the good one. It used to be, you know. Well, you can't live in memories forever. She was. And look at her now. She's like a plant. The doctors say there's hope, William said, clearly immersed in his own thoughts. Perhaps more time is needed. Miranda shook her head. Here he goes again. The doctor said it is not what they say. They do not want to add another patient to the institution. That is all. That's all they say. About the hope of needing a home environment of warmth from her relatives. What kind of warmth does she need? She may not know anything yet. That's what they all say. Son, belittling, said Miranda. Do you see her hope for yourself? What hope can there be when Molly has been lying in bed for 4 months? She cannot move a finger. I even get scared when she looks at me, when I go up to her. And how does she look at me? I get goosebumps all over my body. I just started to be really scared of her. William scared. Nonsense. He brushed me off. That's silly to you, but I'm scared of her. William, here she lies. She doesn't move. She's silent. And who knows what she's thinking? I don't think she's thinking at all anymore. If she goes up again, it might even get worse. Maybe then these times will seem like heaven to you. You know what a physically healthy, but insane person thought about it. He'll get over it. Yeah, he'll come running back with a knife. Before you know it, who's she stabbing? William answered irritably. Mom, you talk. Don't talk. What makes you think she's insane? What are you, a doctor? He understood that his mother just wants to talk him down, so she does not know what she says. But there are boarding schools for people like her. There's better professional care than yours, and doctors are there to help if anything happens. Do you know how much a boarding school costs? William asked. With care and everything. It's like 2/3 of your pension every month was like half my salary. And I, Miranda, clapped my hands, already figured it out. We're going to rent your apartment, and you're going to move here. Here's the money to pay for it. You'll visit her every weekend. And of course, when and if her condition improves, and if it turns out she's okay mentally, we'll take her back right away. I'll go, Mom, he said, getting up. Molly, it's time to give her medicine. Good night. Out of the corner of his eye, William noticed that the expression on his mother's face instantly changed from caring to contemptuous indifference. How quickly? Seconds, and the mood was already very different. Go, go, she said in an icy tone. You'll spend the rest of your life carrying pots out from under a sick woman. Until you grow old. You'll remember me then. William shrugged and said nothing. As he was in his house slippers, he quickly crossed the stairwell and opened the apartment door. In the opposite direction, his wife's room was unchanged, though something might have changed. The night light is on, he lit it himself, and here's the bedside table covered in medicine. And none of it helps. And here's the movie he turned on for her, but it's already over. Now there are cartoons on the screen. Molly seemed to be asleep, but as soon as he came to the bed, she opened her eyes. It's time for the medicine. Molly, he said. Come on. William brought a teaspoon to his wife's lips and slowly poured the contents into her mouth. Well done, she drank it. What are we looking at here? Shouldn't we get changed? He slipped his hand under the blanket. He felt her diaper look dry. But good night then. I'm turning off the light, if you don't mind. Molly, as usual, didn't mind. He adjusted the pillows, made his wife comfortable, opened the window for the night, and closed the curtains. He left the nightlight on. Go to sleep, my dear. Pleasant dreams. The corners of his wife's lips quivered. William realized she was trying to smile at him, but it looked creepy. Her lips didn't obey, mounting, turning his wife's face into a horrible grimace. Sleep, he repeated, and quickly went out. There are times when life goes on, as if a silk ribbon smeared smoothly, beautifully. And sometimes, some event takes and divides life into before and after life. Grief is divided into the before and the rest of the damn bus. After the accident, he was lucky he only got a couple of scratches and twisted his finger. But that was nothing. And here Molly doctors collected in pieces like a construction set. Afterward, William couldn't remember the sequence of events. He only remembered how he sat in the emergency room and looked at the burning inscription. Quietly, the surgery was going on. And he was glad that the sign wasn't going out. Because then it meant only one thing: life goes on. And then there were the long 10 days his wife spent in the ICU, somewhere between life and death. And no doctor dared to look William in the eyes. He looked at the doctors with pleading eyes, repeating the same question. She will live. My wife will live. Say something. The doctors, realizing they couldn't say anything comforting, repeated the same answer. The prognosis is cautious. Time will tell. And rushed on to their patients' cares. It is a lie that doctors are insensitive. It can be bad for them too, when you can't help. But they expect this help from you. They look you in the eye and ask, help. Molly survived, but she remained bedridden. And William again looked hopefully into the focused faces of the doctors. She would be able to move. Well, at least then not immediately. Or would she stay like this forever? The doctors were much more optimistic this time. There are cases when the will to live works wonders. Try to support your wife. She needs it now. Let her see you cheerful, smiling, and don't make a big deal out of yourself. All the time you get discouraged, you will get depressed, and then you will need help. William was unbearable. Pity his wife's helplessness. She loved movement so much. Walking, dancing, just walking. Nothing, Molly, repeated he. You will manage. You will walk again, maybe even run. But time passed, and with each passing day there was less and less hope. Molly, no matter how hard she tried, could not move her fingertips. You have to be patient. The doctor said, understand, recovery can take years. You're ready to despair after a few weeks. It was then that Miranda began at first to hint to her son, very cautiously, that it was time to stop being the caregiver to his wife. You do nothing but Molly work while she sleeps, and the rest of the time I take care of her. You can't do that. You're not a babysitter. William, who at first had been simple-heartedly telling his mother everything, seeking her support, and had become increasingly silent in response to her inquiries. Miranda was in a constant state of confusion. Her son is such a handsome, smart, successful programmer. He stayed home with his wife. A transfer to a remote job solved his money problems. But it completely cut William off from the outside world. Miranda could not accept the new format of her son's work. After all normal people go to work, and only the lame ones work from home. Or seamstresses. Earlier you got up, washed and shaved in the morning, and went to work in a beautiful office. Miranda complained bitterly. At work, too, there's the staff, the conversations, the news being discussed. Talked to people, got acquainted, saw beautiful girls, tried to be no worse than others. And now what has become of you? What have you become? When was the last time you went to the hairdresser's? Look how you've grown. My bangs are sticking out. I'll buy a headband. My son tried to make a joke. It's fashionable now. But Miranda did not appreciate humor and was not going to retreat. And where have you been lately? except for the stores, pharmacies, and social services. I'm telling you again, look what you've become. You're all crumpled up, unpleasant, wrinkled, walking around in your pajamas like you should be. William ignored his mother's lamentations over and over again, shrugged, and kept quiet. Silent, silent. It was getting harder and harder, though. The time when he tried to explain something to his mother. It had long been over. Miranda refused to understand that Molly needed constant care. And it was not a caprice, not a whim, not a pretense that her son really didn't have time for hairdressing. That cultural events do not interest him. And pajamas turned out to be a surprisingly comfortable thing, especially when taking care of a bedridden patient. That he should be in a tuxedo changing diapers and feeding his wife cakes. "Mother, I live my life the way I am comfortable," he answered from this remote job, with this hair. "And I'm fine with that shit too. I'm fine with anything. So don't start, you look 20 years older already." "So what?" At this point, Mom usually let out a long passing sigh and covered her face with her hands. William stared silently at her smooth, well-groomed hands. Fancy manicured fingers on the ring finger had a glittering ring with a transparent stone. "I wonder if it's a diamond on her or so glass," he asked himself. "Do you even listen to me?" Tragically exclaimed his mother. I have to go, Mother." Sometimes William regretted terribly that he had bought an apartment in the same house as his mother. There would be no negotiating business and dropping in less often. She would come herself, even better before bus time. When Molly was on her feet, Miranda liked to ghost wash cups in the sink under her tongue or find dust particles and shake her head disapprovingly for a long time. All her life she strived for perfect cleanliness. Instead of any party, a walk watching a movie, Miranda invariably preferred cleaning. "A woman must be an excellent hostess," she repeated. Otherwise, what was the point of her? And what happened when she found out that Molly from time to time ordered delivery of ready-made meals? Ah, what passions rage. "It's full of chemicals, son," she cried. "She wants to poison you." Then William laughed. "Mom, all over the world, people use delivery, and there's nothing wrong with that. Restaurants themselves have no interest in their customers getting food poisoning. After all, it's a stigma on their business reputation. On the contrary, they try to make sure everything tastes good so that people become regular customers. Is it difficult for your Molly to cook on her own?" Miranda sternly questioned. "What kind of wife is she then? When your father and I lived together, I worked and raised you, and every day I had clean pastries on the table, and always for lunch, the first meal, and the second one, just like it's supposed to be. Yes, if you want to know, William, that if a woman has guests and nothing to serve with her tea, she's no hostess at all. It used to be like that. Mom used to talk her son into it, but now it's a different time. And then what difference does it make? The mistress is not the mistress. Is there some kind of competition or something? Would you say no if you were offered to unload the household, to vacuum cleaner himself rolled on the floor and remove the dust, so that the dishes were washed by a machine, and the delivery brought delicious food directly to your home? And she would say no. My mother cried because I wasn't lazy. I even always cleaned the floors myself with my hands. You can't clean them properly with a mop. And I also took good care of myself. I used to walk around temporarily, in a dress and a hairdo. And your vein of God knows what she wears. Molly is a climbing instructor, my son reminded me. At her job, it's comfortable to walk around in sportswear. But how will she be in a dress at the climbing wall? You think about it. And who needs a haircut there? That's not the wife I wanted for you, my mother sighed, and again those mournfully pressed lips and universal sadness in her eyes. I wanted you to have a normal wife, an economic one, to take care of you properly. And who did you choose for yourself? Will you have children? Then what? They'll be walking around hungry and dirty forever. And that was all back then. And now William was trying to reduce his mother's visits to a minimum. when she sees how many dirty dishes he has now. I dread to think what she would do, or even worse, will begin to lament. That's my son, to what you are lying wife led. There's no time to wash the dishes. So, no matter how you slice it, but to make daily courtesy visits, mother had to avoid the worst. Molly's condition, meanwhile, did not change. Sometimes it even seemed as if there was nothing more to look forward to. William habitually cared for his wife, but more and more often he began to feel anger instead of compassion. Could it just be that spring had come? He asked himself. The sun was beginning to warm up outside, the first flowers were blooming, and the drops were cheerfully whistling. Even in the best of weather, he had to run to the store or the drugstore, and it was impossible to linger even for a minute. The lines were getting longer and longer, and the streets were crowded with couples in love. Favorite cafes reopened their summer porches, and musicians began to hold concerts in the open air. And night movie nights, when the audience sat right on the grass, wrapped in plaids, and watched new movies. Just like that in the street, all that had to be cut out of my life, and maybe even forever. The thought made William ache. What was he being punished for? He had never robbed, murdered, raped, sold people into slavery, or engaged in espionage. But for some reason, he was sentenced to indefinite imprisonment within 4 walls, next to his wife. Is that even her? Or is it just an empty shell of her with no thoughts, no feelings? Maybe she doesn't even recognize him. She remembers me. She asked the doctors a question, and they shook their hands. It's hard to say, as long as she is silent. Try communicating with her, like having her eyes open. In the beginning, yes, and closed, no. Can you hear me, Molly? She was opening her eyes. Do you remember who I am? Again, the affirmative answer. Do you remember what happened to you? She remembered. Can you squeeze my hand? Her eyes immediately closed. Tears gathered in the corners. Don't cry, my good one. William stroked her short-cropped head. Washing her long hair was too difficult. Miranda had only had one friend in her entire life. They'd been friends since high school, when they'd once been stuck drawing a wall newspaper as punishment for a poorly written biology Olympiad. Back then, Wendy was a skinny, short girl with a face studded with frequent freckles. Her stiff, dark red hair looked like wire. Even being pulled into such a braid, Miranda gazed in wonder at any of the girls' faces and could not make out her features under the freckles in any way. And the girl suddenly smiled, showing large white teeth, and held out her hand. "Wendy," she said. And so their friendship began. And then years later, by some miracle, Wendy was able to get rid of her freckles and tame her unruly hair. And that's when it became obvious to everyone around her how beautiful she really was. It turned out that Wendy had a thin, straight nose, curved eyebrows, and dimples on her cheeks. Fans of the new beauty was the abundance of the sea, which made Miranda secretly jealous. But Wendy was always such a funny, kind girl that it was simply impossible to make friends with her. And now retired Wendy has not lost her zeal in life. Growing up as a child, she began to passionately pursue all the things that previously she did not have time. She bred roses, studied interior design, and learned French. And in the summer, she moved to her precious rose bushes at the cottage, and at the same time intercepted her grandchildren with her. Let the children breathe the air, and parents rest, Miranda said. And all 5 grandchildren were looking forward to the summer vacations because at Grandma's dacha, they could build tree houses, splash in the pool, and run barefoot as much as they wanted. Miranda, looking at her friend, often thought that they were very different, and it is not clear what brought them together. They were not a wall newspaper. They were nothing alike. Wendy had a biology degree and a passion for work, while Miranda had a pedagogical school and worked for her retirement. Wendy had been joking about housework all her life, and she could, if she got really tired and went to bed, not wash the dishes or wipe the dust, but instead go for a walk with the kids and then the grandkids, or even just lie around. A book to read. Miranda always had a cult of cleanliness and order. She wouldn't even sit down to watch TV until everything around her was sparkling. Wendy was also easy on men. After her divorce from her boy's father, she had plenty of affairs, but she wouldn't bring another man into her children's home. I have enough family of my own. She laughed in response to her friend's indignation. I have kids, that's what matters. They are my family. I don't want to burden myself with a man. I want to decide for myself where to live, when to take a vacation, when to eat, and what to spend money on. They had nothing in common. But now Miranda went to Wendy, though she did not know why. Whether to ask for advice, or to complain about life, or just to sit next to a cheerful friend. That's to charge from her as from a battery. That never runs out of charge. Wendy lived in a house just like her. The two-story old building, with its high ceilings and weights painted a lovely peach color. The facade is buried in greenery. Around it were frequently planted trees. Wendy noticed her at once, and her restless friend was washing the windows, standing fearlessly on the windowsill. When she saw Miranda, she blurted out a smile and waved her hand to move. The old goat yelled merrily at the young man passing by with his head up. "Hello, Auntie." He laughed. Wendy waved to him too. "You'll be on your way home from work tonight. Stop by. I'll give you some cakes for your mother. Come on, Miranda. What are you doing?" "I've got pies baked in the oven with strawberry carrots, jam, and meat. Go upstairs. I'll put the tea on." Miranda, as usual when she heard Wendy's greeting, became indignant and giggled. At the same time, her friend was not known for her exquisite sense of humor, but she made her crude jokes with such sincere cheerfulness and warmth that she must have been mad at her. "What's the matter with William?" Wendy asked. "He put a huge plate of hot pies on the table, so on the right with jam, on the left with carrots. The meat looks right at you, but since your young mollies are better." "What is there?" Miranda sighed sorrowfully. "Listen," she asked with horror, looking at the mountain of cakes. "Where do you put so much, Wendy? How do you manage to eat so much and not remember it?" My friend shrugged her shoulders. "And why should I eat everything? I treat all the neighbors, acquaintances, guests. I even go to the market and treat people I know. They are tired all day long. I can't cook just a little. That's why I give away the extra. You're lucky. You're not. I have nothing but grief." Molly frowned worse. "Listen, let me ask my sister-in-law. She's in a new clinic, works with a doctor. Anyway, he says he's on the verge of genius. Let her take a look at Molly. Maybe she can give me some advice. She's been looked at before." Miranda brushed it off. Everybody kept saying the same thing. "Let's be optimistic. We must hope, do not despair." They do it again and again. Well, that's good, isn't it? I notice Wendy takes an appetite bite of strawberries and cake, so she will get better little by little. Miranda shook her head. "I don't believe it." Quietly, she said. As they brought her in, she's still lying in stacks. William tiptoes around her, and his hair is already thinning. Can you imagine? He's 30 and a tail, already sitting up and sitting down. What's that got to do with it? Well, it's a common problem with modern men. My friend smiled. They're going bald early. Yours was a little late. Others are as bald as a knee at 25. Miranda, not listening, continued. And I don't understand what he eats when everyone else does. His whole life is now subordinated to Molly. Then wash it. It's time to feed her, then take her medication. The nurse comes to give him injections and IVs. How much money is spent on this? I will not even say. Her son lives according to her regime, and she does not even dare to call her alive. A living thing cannot exist by the regime of a non-living thing. She takes all the soul out of my boy. If I understand you correctly, said Wendy, are you saying that William needs a rest? But it's a perfectly normal thing to do. Hire a nurse, and he can go out for a while. And you'll come around. See that the vein is properly cared for. That's all it takes. Personally, I don't see what the problem is. He doesn't want to go anywhere. He sits with that woman all the time, as if someone chained him. He's like a machine himself, washing, feeding, changing, dressing, and everything in a circle. So the wife is not a stranger. And the doctors say, so what? That she is a wife. Almost screamed Miranda that love is enough for 6 months. And then what? Give, fetch, earn, I don't know. They're in love, you see. I was against this wedding from the start. You saw her, went around, dissolved, cooked every other day. And I got a smile from Wendy. It's a modern fashion. I even like it. It's you and me like on stilts, on plinth heels, and winter and summer. And the blouse of theirs with bars put on these skirts. And they have freedom. You could wear sneakers and a hoodie all year long. You can go as you please. No one will say a word. They don't say a word about the cooking. Thank God for that. And you remember how we hosted guests and salad, and we need a hot meal and appetizers. Then there's the cake. And the guests leave and you wash dishes till nightfall. Oh, how I remember. They order pizza, and they're sitting there, chatting. The table is set, and they don't appreciate the food. They're going to talk, not to eat. Sounds good to me. It's better to let them take an extra walk than to go out and cook for 3 days. Oh, Wendy, how indifferent are you as a mother to your children? What do you like? That your wife doesn't take care of your son properly. I never thought of that. She poked her friend and reached for the next pie. My sons are both independent. Why should anyone have to take care of them? They take care of themselves, whoever you want, so that you won't be left until after the 3rd child is born. Wendy laughed. Very pleased with your joke. Miranda remained silent. She had started this conversation for nothing. You can't expect understanding from Wendy. She's all about modern visions. Freedom from kitchen slavery and hard labor cleaning and all that. Freedom, you see, they want. And who's going to keep the family home? It is not for nothing that woman has been called a keeper since the dawn of time. What can be kept when you entrust your hearth to others as a cleaner, a cook, all these machines with automatic dishwashers and vacuum cleaners? Freedom, you say. Miranda herself. I did not share all these newfangled fads. Traditions were not invented by fools either. Right? If one generation lives this way for another, and a third one vice versa, then what will happen? Chaos and confusion. And no experience will have time to accumulate. Every new generation will reinvent the wheel, although it was invented a long time ago. Still, she said, a woman has to create comfort, and that includes cooking and cleaning, and know how to sew curtains and bake pies. You used to work part-time in a kindergarten, her friend reminded her after an afternoon at home. Why shouldn't you cook porridge and sew curtains if you have plenty of time to spare? Others work full-time and irregular hours, and who works for themselves? Those don't leave work at all. They even think about business at home. But my husband was earning good money, so why should I work out? By the way, William, also receives a very good salary, Molly. As much as I told her, she did not want to leave work. You see, it was important for her to work. I wonder why it is unknown yet. Maybe she was just wiggling her ass in front of other people's men. There's a job Miranda loves. If that hasn't happened in your life, you're just unlucky. All right, that's enough. Miranda got completely angry. You always disagree with me. Tell me, how can I save William from Molly? He'll still be sitting next to her. She could squeak for another 30 years. Can you imagine if he's not free of her till he's over 60? No friends, no career, no kids. Does he want to be rescued? Wendy asked. Or is this just another one of your diversions to make the guy happy? Wendy, are you out of your mind? What kind of diversion? What kind of diversion? He doesn't know what he wants yet. And I'm a mother. I know what's good for my son. I think Molly should be in an institution, and let the doctors look after her. And let William start his life again. Go back to work a normal job. Not this one. A telecommuting job. Extension work for whom knows what. He will look at people again, learn to talk and live. And then we'll find him a nice girl. He'll get married again. But how can we convince him? I do not know, grinned her friend. In her voice sounded no note of sympathy. And if she knew, she would not say. Why not? Because you poke your nose into things you don't need to know. Well, you know. Miranda jumped up, gasping with indignation. I thought you were my only friend. And you? No way. She stormed out of the blockhouse at a pace she'd never been able to develop in her youth. Is that what resentment means? William decided to allow himself a little unplanned vacation. No big deal. Just half an hour on a bench in his own yard. Molly had fallen asleep in the afternoon, and he already knew she wouldn't wake up until an hour later. He was about to sit down to work, but the sun outside the window was already very warm, and it turned out that there was no more coffee in the house. A programmer cannot go without coffee. Even without food can be without water, but not without coffee. William looked once more into his wife's room. She was sleeping soundly, and there was a body outside. The children were scurrying about the yard, frightening the pigeons. It didn't work, and shut them down to behave in an orderly and unhurried manner with the kids around. William, coming out of the store, leisurely took a deep breath of warm spring air. He walks to his house. How long it had been since he had gone anywhere in a hurry. He felt as if he had spent many, many years in a dungeon, and suddenly he was allowed to go out into the fresh air and be among normal people who walk and go about their business every day and often do not even notice. From how beautiful the world around them is, and William noticed everything in puddles on the pavement, in which reflected everything. Such a high today blue sky, and a wonderful aroma burst their buds on the branches and frightened pigeons. One in particular had stolen a motor breast and a black one. First in the tail, William tore off the edge of the loaf and revealed it to the birds. They immediately engaged in a fierce struggle, each for his crumb of bread. Have you fed them yet? He heard a woman's voice. Lights out, guys. I'll feed you tomorrow. Excuse me. You girls standing right in front of him were smoking. You have shoulder-length hair and a cute, snub-nosed nose. She showed him a bread roll. I feed them here every day. She smiled. And today you took over for me. William smiled, not knowing what to say. The girl was short, only about shoulder height. She wore a short checkered overcoat, which she unbuttoned. She was probably getting hot from this spring heat, or maybe it was just the way she was. Her plump lips dangling at the end of her light, quick scarf, slightly painted with gold luster, somewhere around her knee. Her skin had already been touched by the first spring tan. William suddenly thought how long it had been since he had seen such an ordinary, healthy girl, not in a cast, not in bandages, without a monstrous poverty and a haggard look. And I'd completely forgotten how nice it turned out to be. And I moved into this house recently, she said. 2 weeks ago. I live on the 5th floor. So we're neighbors. He was happy. I'm on 4, only I haven't seen you before for some reason. My name is William. Vanessa, she introduced herself. We'll visit each other now. You know, when you move to a new place, you always miss each other so much. I used to live in a different city, and I knew everybody in the neighborhood. Everybody used to come to my place for tea, and I also used to come here before we settled down. Pretty boring, huh? He was confused. It was time to go home. Molly must be awake by now. Yes, I know what you mean, William. Miranda hurried across the yard with a bag from the nearest supermarket, smiling brightly. And I bought you some tangerines in your favorites. You do not hurry. Give me the keys. I'll bring you myself. The situation is delicate. Of course, Vanessa didn't know about Molly Vanessa. How could she? But if he hurried home now, his mother might well stop and talk to the neighbor and blurt things out. But he didn't want to give his mother the keys either. He made up his mind and took the keys out of his pocket. His mother, smiling contentedly, entered the staircase. That's good. Let the boy talk a little more. Pretty with a neighbor in William, and Molly's apartment smelled like medicine. And there was a peculiarly unpleasant silence, which only happens in those houses where there is a seriously ill person. And of course, There was no comfort at all. The windows are unwashed curtains hanging unwashed for 6 months, and the dishes. How many dirty ones? It's just awful. Poor William is so exhausting. He's got such a streak. Where does he think of home? Miranda put a bag on the table, put out tangerines, and put the kettle on. William will come at least for a hot cup of coffee. She looked into Molly's room. Here, of course, everything was equipped to the highest class of orthopedics: check bed, a rack for a dropper. Every day a nurse came by, a nightstand with medicines. On the wall hung a large TV. On the headboard, a towel in the dresser, a supply of diapers, disposable diapers, and wet wipes. And the sleeping princess herself was washed, and in clean pajamas. It was like a deluxe room for VIP patients. Yes, William, the poor man's been working very hard, all for his wife. Where to think of himself? And his wife's a vegetable. She's neither here nor there. She's not getting any better or worse. Miranda suddenly felt such a surge of hatred for this crippled woman that she frightened herself. She suddenly caught herself looking at the pillow and thinking that it wouldn't cost anything to put it on Molly's face and then leave the apartment as if nothing had happened. I wonder how long it will be before she suffocates. Molly's mother-in-law's eyes opened colorless. No living dolls exactly. What is she looking at, I ask you? Breath still hissed. Miranda, leaning to the very face of the woman. You're breathing. I see you're lying in the ceiling looking. And William slaved for you, and slaved every day like the damned. Who was it that sentenced him to you? Molly could not answer, but it seemed to her mother-in-law that something flashed in the woman's eyes. Astonishment, fear, resentment. Well, listen to me. I do not wish you harm, as well as good. In general, I do not care about you at all. You're a stranger to me, and you'll always be a stranger to me. But if you must know, I even feel a little sympathy for you. What happened to you? Maybe it's worse than a quick death. But I'm a mother. It's not for you. It's for my son. My soul hurts. I cannot bear to see him forgetting his life for you. Have you seen what he's become, flapping his eyes? What do you mean? And doesn't your conscience gnaw at you that it's another man's life? But why would a young, healthy man want to plant for his wife? Don't you feel sorry for him? He's burying himself alive. Molly closed her eyes, letting her know that she didn't want to hear her mother-in-law speak anymore. But the mother-in-law leaned toward her again, her fingers digging into her short hair. The daughter-in-law lifted her head. Molly, she whispered, cannot get better. So I am dying. Die. Have pity on the boy. It would make him feel better. Release William. He can't breathe. Let him live. She hoped the woman would open her eyes again. Look at her. But she did not. Miranda let her hair out and wiped her hands squeamishly on her dress. What is there to talk to you about? With a miserable look, she tossed as she left the room. When William returned home, his mother was already sitting in the kitchen drinking tea. He noticed that all the dishes had been washed, the crumbs had been swept off the table, and even the dead geranium in the window had finally been watered. Well, that's something, he exclaimed with cheerful surprise. Why did you decide to clean up? Maybe you made dinner too. His mood was high. His little guerrilla foray into the outside world was a success. He strolled along, taking his time. It was almost like a whole adventure. But the gifts of fate did not end there. She was generous to him today and managed to warm himself in the sun and feed the pigeons. There is also a girl so cool to talk to. I wish I could stop by and see her. All the more she almost invited him. Sit down, son, have some coffee, said Miranda. Molly is still asleep. I just checked. Dry, clean, no fever. That's how William looked at his watch. She's taking a long time tonight. I'll go and look in on her. Don't make a fuss. His mother caught him by the arm. I told you very clearly. She's asleep. I just left her. Don't disturb her. Let her get her strength back. Why don't you tell me how you like your new neighbor? But he couldn't help smiling. She is nice. She is so nice, sociable, very nice. So, In return, smiled Miranda. It's good that you liked her. Now just imagine how many of these little and pleasant ones are around, and everyone would be happy to chat, to go on a date with such an interesting man. And you're still sitting at home. Molly's guarding hers. That's enough, Mother. William slammed his open palm on the table. That's enough of that. And anyway, thank you for the tangerines and for sneaking in too. But I don't have time. Molly's coming up. She'll need to be fed. And we'll probably have guests tonight. So excuse me, I'm busy. Come on, son. Don't be nervous. My mother came up from the table. I was just leaving. What kind of guests are you having? I know them. Yes, the sun has already softened. One guest is expected, that's all. Molly's friend Kate. She is a hairdresser. Molly used to go out with her and get her hair done. She called today and said she would be there tonight. She'll be in the neighborhood. She's coming by to check on us. So I don't have much time. I have to go. I'm going. Miranda calmed him down, and she went out into the hallway. Keys are on the table. Bye. As soon as she got home, Miranda grabbed a stool and put it by the front door. Her plan of action, which was simple and ingenious, occurred to her at once. Even there, in William's kitchen, Miranda realized what she should do. Now all she had to do was to wait a little longer. As soon as she heard footsteps on the stairs, she immediately began to look through the peephole. Just do not miss this, Kate. The wait was long, no less than an hour. Miranda tried to stretch without leaving the door. In order not to miss Molly's friends in general, there was always the option of intercepting her on the way back, when she was already leaving the apartment. But then she might be in a hurry. And William, a well-mannered boy, would be sure to escort her if the hour was late. There are too many complications. It would make much more sense to pick up Kate now on the way to visit. It wasn't until 6 p.m. when an unfamiliar brunette appeared on the floor. Miranda realized it was time. She, trying not to make any noise, opened her door and called softly to Kate. The stranger turned around. Good evening. Do we know each other? Not yet, Miranda smiled. You see, I am William's mother. Could you come in here for a moment? I just need to discuss something with me. Yes, Kate, just you. Come in, please. It won't take long at all. All right. Kate went into the apartment, but didn't undress. She stopped in the hallway. What's the matter with Molly? What is it? Did she what? No, Kate. Miranda smiled. Everything is the same with Molly, and that is the main problem. Let's go to the kitchen, and I'll pour you some tea. Or do you want coffee? Never mind. Tell me, why did you call me here? What's going on? Miranda looked at her guest doubtfully, as if deciding. Well, since you insist that you have a serious talk with me, then let's get to the point. Well, Kate, how do you say? You see, Kate went straight to the point. Miranda, unfortunately, our dear Molly is not getting any better. Doctors raise their hands and advise to be patient and wait, but no one can tell us how long to wait and what to wait for. Although William is doing everything possible, but she threw up her hands and looked sadly at her guest. Kate only looked at her hostess expectantly and did not say a word. My heart bleeds for both of them, Miranda continued. I am a mother, and it pains me to see William suffer in vain. And Molly's helplessness too. It is such anguish. You probably can't even imagine. It is a good thing though, and God forbid. You may not believe me, but I made a vow to myself long ago that whoever my son chooses to marry will be my daughter, whatever she may be, whether I like her or not, but I will certainly accept her as my own child. And I know this well, as a harmful mother-in-law. Maybe that's what life is for young spouses. I promised myself that I would never be like that. And here is our precious Molly daughter, I love like my own daughter. Of course, Kate nodded understandingly. That's how it should be in good families. But I still don't understand. Yes, Miranda put her hand on Kate's palm. Now I will try to explain everything to you. I've been talking to the doctors about how we could get our Molly back on her feet, Secretly from William. Of course, he doesn't know anything. I don't want to worry him. He's already exhausted with nerves. After all, nothing helps. So far we have tried massages and physiotherapy and even injections. But the results are so negligible that there is nothing to talk about. We can say that there are none at all. So, one doctor told me in confidence, of course, that it can help. Well, shock therapy, some kind of very strong shock that would make Molly go up. And that's what I wanted to ask for help from you. You don't mind. Do you just need it? No. Wait. Kate stopped her. Are you sure you won't make it worse for her? She's already weakened, sick. Are you suggesting we give her a big shock? What if she dies? What are you suggesting? Miranda assured her. On the contrary, this shock will unlock the body's hidden resources. And then our Molly daughter will recover from the shock. Well, of course. You see, the doctor told me that if any function of the body is not used, then it dies out, and again to connect it, to make it work, it's very, very difficult. And the worst part is that it can be too late. The function will die out forever in our Molly. You know, Kate, wait, what function are you talking about? She opens and closes her eyes. She is able to swallow and digest food. That's all true. But you and I, Kate, don't know if she will ever be able to move or talk. And this is important. Do you agree with me? Miranda tried to speak confidently with enthusiasm. This most enthusiastic assurance should threaten me like an alcoholic's fumes. She reminded herself, don't you want our Molly to be herself again and not a helpless plant like now? Help. Kate and William don't want to hear about anything like that. This may be our only chance. Is it possible not to use it? Kate still sighed suspiciously and anxiously, looking at her hostess. And what have you come up with? You tell me. Bought it, Miranda exulted. It should have still entered the theater. I'm an even cleaner actress than the others, so that the shock therapy will work. She began. You have to be able to touch the patient. That is, something meaningful to him must be in danger. And the only person who really matters to Molly right now is her husband. It's only natural. They have no children. She doesn't see anybody but William. He takes care of her, tries to communicate with her in his own way. He's the center of her universe. Well, what's her favorite thing to do? What business is it when she's lying there not moving? So you and I need to act through him, through William. That is, if Molly realizes she's losing her husband, she'll probably get angry, frightened. Better, of course, both. It will give her a powerful rush of strength, and then she will be able to overcome her infirmity. In short, try to somehow, well, seduce or something, William to arouse interest in you, maybe even start an affair with him. The main thing is for Molly to understand that she will either go up right now or all know she has more family. Kate sat with her eyes down, and nothing could be read on her face. Miranda looked at her guest with sincere hope. She had to be persuaded. If only she would believe, if only she would not refuse. Miranda's shock therapy didn't believe a dime of it. But it was necessary. It was necessary to somehow tear away William's soul to open Molly. Yes, she might die of shock. So what? She's almost dead as it is. She's just breathing and batting her eyes. Maybe she doesn't want to live anymore. Somebody asked her that, but she can't say anything. So why not make it easier for her to go to a better world? Maybe she's not lying. The theory about rebirths and Molly being born again is healthy, and she's being held here by force, especially since both William and his mother would be in the clear before the law in this case. They haven't laid a finger on Molly. William took care of her. If they had to, they would not be stingy and find a great nurse or not. Better to send her to an institution or something. So it's not murder at all. Well, and if Molly survives, then William will win anyway. What a good mood he came home in today, and his eyes were shining when he looked at his neighbor. What would happen if he met a young, beautiful woman who wanted to seduce him? After that, he himself would not want to go back to Molly's bed in a world of drips diapers, and who knows what else, and Molly, well, they will arrange her somewhere under supervision. Will find ways to even pay extra money to the staff to look after her better. If only the brunette would agree. And she remained silent, sat motionless, did not raise her eyes, staring at her hands. "Help, Kate," Miranda pleaded. "We all do. Especially Molly. We all need your help. Don't refuse us." William, today everything was easy. He quickly put the apartment in good order, fed and even sat his wife a little for a meeting with a friend, and once again ran to the store to buy cakes for tea. And even quite unexpectedly, he noticed that he was humming a funny song. Did today's short leave in life change anything about him? William suddenly realized that he turned out to be alive. Until then, it seemed to him that everything that made him human must be mercilessly destroyed. Otherwise, oddly enough, there was no way to survive. What was the point of dreaming of a walk on a warm spring day, about talking to a pretty girl, if you can't have that anyway, like a baby with sweets? So why torment yourself with meaningless and unrealizable desires, only to wear yourself out? Deprive yourself of your last nerve, and in the end, one day, stick your head in the noose, just because it has become completely unbearable. No, it's better to wipe all the silly desires out of you, not to think about them, to forget that there are similar days of entertainment, unexpected acquaintances, to become a robot in order to survive. Paradoxically, it was the only way. And now, just 1 hour in the wild, and everything human came alive in William. He rejoiced in the sunshine, laughed at the pigeon squawk, admired his new neighbor, and flirted with her a little. He was alive and enjoying it, because it had been a long time. It had been an infinitely long time since he had spent time so rich and interesting. As it turns out, it doesn't take much for a man to come alive. Kate came in around 7 p.m. William opened the doors in front of her and was even a little confused. He expected to see an old acquaintance whom he had never looked at much. He remembered a recognizable silhouette named Kate, but no more. He did not even recognize her on the phone. And when he saw her now, he was taken aback. Why hadn't he noticed before that Kate was such a beautiful woman? Thick, dark hair, shiny, sharp chin, and long neck. The smile that played on Kate's lips was both joyful and slightly defiant, or so it seemed from her sly gaze. "Didn't you recognize her?" asked the guest. "I thought we'd known each other for a long time." There was a flash of laughter in her eyes. "I recognized her," William said, "only not at once. I can barely recognize myself in the mirror." She laughed, loudly, cheerfully. How nice, it turns out, when someone laughs. William hadn't heard anything to laugh in so long that he couldn't stand it and laughed himself and his guest. "It's good to see you, Kate heartily," he said, and gave his wife's friend a fleeting hug. "Molly and I have been waiting." As she asked Kate, "Any improvement?" "It's hard to say," William answered evasively. "Come and see for yourself." Kate followed him on tiptoe down the corridor and peered into the room. "Hello, sweetheart." Kate smiled and touched her friend's hair. "Look how your hair has grown already. That's the speed. Soon you will be a mermaid again." Molly's lips twisted again, trying unsuccessfully to fold into a smile. "What is Molly?" Kate didn't understand her. "Are you in pain?" "No," answered William for his wife. "She wants to smile at you. You'd better talk to her. If she closes her eyes, it means she wants to say no. And if she opens yes, you two talk. I'll set the table in the meantime." Kate sat on the edge of her friend's bed and took Molly's hand in her palm. "Are you getting better?" she asked. "How do you feel?" "Better, at least a little." Molly closed her eyes. "So," said Kate, "it needs a little more time. You must be terribly tired of lying down. You've always been so agile." Molly's eyes opened. Kate stroked her friend's fingers. No reaction, as if they weren't alive. "You'll get up soon," Kate said firmly. "You have to set yourself up for it, you know. Tell yourself that I can get up. I will make it. If not today, then tomorrow I will be able to get up. Just lie there and repeat it to yourself day after day, like a mantra. You've got so much to do. And William, he misses you, and he wants you to get well soon. Don't forget that. Make sure you get well, and remember that it's half up to you. Molly tried to smile again. Can you try to dodge the fingers? Kate asked her. Let's try on 1, 2, 3 closed eyes. Are you tired? Do you want to sleep? Are your eyes open? Okay, then go to sleep. I'll sit in the kitchen with William for a chat. William is already pouring a cup of fragrant tea. On the table was a plate of cakes and a vase of tangerines. Even a small bouquet of fresh flowers. Cups, for the sake of livening up in beauty. But just a holiday of some kind like flowers? Asked William. Honestly, I didn't buy them. I just picked up a bed. But I really wanted to decorate the table. How lovely. Kate admired. I see you spoil yourself, he smiled. I'm here for you, like Molly, didn't I tell you? Oh, Kate shook her head. Don't ask. I wish I could say she looked better than she did last time. But for now, yourself, what do you think? I don't know, William answered honestly. Suddenly, it became clear to him how tired he was. And not just for today, but in general for all these days of weeks of fears, hopes, intense waiting. Waiting for what? He didn't know it himself. I'm just waiting, he said. What am I waiting for? I don't know. Sometimes I think she's better, sometimes the opposite. Or maybe it's just that nothing changes. You know, it's like when you look at a picture for a long, long time, and it seems like the pieces are moving. And in fact, you just look through all your eyes. But it can't go on like this forever, can it? Kate echoed him. It can't. I suppose it can't. Don't despair, though. Well, maybe you just need to get some rest. And then, with renewed vigor, you'll be back in the fight. You can, when there's hope. He grinned. I got my hopes up a long time ago. That. But if you don't get your hopes up, that's even worse. That's the end of it, you know. Okay, drink your tea. I'm really bumming you out, but I didn't mean to. I just don't have anyone to talk to. You know, she's up. I completely forgot. I don't need to be there. Let me at least walk you out, offered William. He knew Kate just wanted to get out of that apartment as soon as possible. From him, from Molly. From the whole atmosphere of sickness and hopelessness. But he wanted some more time with her beside Kate or his neighbor Vanessa, any girl who was free, moving, fixing her hair, laughing. Says he, peeked into his wife's room and made sure Molly was asleep. Let's go, he said, helping Kate put on her jacket. I'll tell her you said goodbye, said a big hello. But I'll tell her everything else, too, that I wish her not to give up, Kate reminded him. I'll tell her that, too. Let's go. The evening was warm, and Kate and William took their time walking to the bus stop. William watched his wife's friend like a miracle, the way she turned her head, stretching that zipper on her jacket, doing a lot of other little movements, and thought about how terribly used to such simple things. And now they fascinate him. He used to pay attention to a woman's bust, the length of her legs, all sorts of things you're supposed to look at, if you're a healthy young man. But he never noticed the way his fingers moved when he tied his shoelaces, counted his change, put his hair in a ponytail. It was probably because he'd never seen other fingers without fretting helplessly before. Also, when the right breeze was blowing, William could smell the faint scent of her perfume. He had forgotten that women used perfume. Molly smelled differently of soap, of medicine for a long time now, only them. Kate called out to him. He suddenly felt a terrible urge to tell her all about it, to make her understand what a miracle she suddenly seemed to him, and to do it in a way that would not make her angry. Find the right words, the most correct, the most accurate. What is William? There were no words. They were gone. They ceased to exist, scattered into letters. He reached out and touched her hair. It was soft, warm. It beckoned him to curl up in it and fall asleep, like being hypnotized. William took another step and tilted his head. He touched the woman's neck with his lips. The skin here was so warm, and he could feel her pulse with his lips, and the scent of perfume here grew darker and brighter. She didn't repel them. It was a miracle, too. The woman warm, alive, quite near. William didn't get home until the morning. Feeling so vicious and happy, as if he were not a grown man, but yesterday's schoolboy who had come to the prom in a dark corner of a pretty classmate. Molly was awake. William walked into her room and stopped at the bedside. The traffic was blocked, he said, guilty, smiling. I had to walk, and then back. No, it wasn't. He sat down on the bed and looked his wife straight in the eyes. How beautiful they used to be, huge blue ones, smiling. They must have been what he had fallen in love with once upon a time. Blue, full of happiness, Molly's big eyes. He had drowned in them and didn't want to swim out. And now it was as if they had faded and become a bit unattractive. What does sickness do to a man? I have come to tell you that I am leaving you, Molly. Forgive me. I know it's not your fault. I know it's not your fault at all. But I'm tired. I don't have any energy left. Next to you, it's as if I'm becoming like you. Today I realized that I am still alive, you know. I want to live, Molly, and that's why I have to leave. William didn't ask to be let go. He just told his wife everything that was in his heart, and for some reason it made him feel better. Don't worry, you won't be alone. We're looking for a boarding house with good care for you, with the best doctors and nurses. You will live there, you will be taken care of, and there will be lots of other people there. You won't be as lonely as you are here. Maybe you can even get better faster. I don't know, maybe I'm just making you feel worse with my stupid nursing. I'm not a nurse. I don't know the ins and outs, and you're just suffering. You shouldn't be at home. And we'll find a good boarding house. I promise you that it will be a garden with clean and bright rooms, and the food there will be delicious. Don't be offended, Molly. I just can't take it anymore, and I'm torturing you and myself. Do you want me to hate you in the end? Molly closed her eyes. That's good, he said, and stroked his wife on the head. That's a clever girl. I had no doubt that you would understand me. That's right. Now I'm going to go and pack. At first you'll have a nurse come to you while we look for a boarding house. Miranda was celebrating her release. On such a happy occasion, she decided to forgive her friend Wendy her senselessness to visit and share her joyful news. On the way to her friend's house, Miranda bought a cake. Everything. From the threshold, she announced, "Take the cake. We will celebrate. It's over. William's suffering. Do you have any wine?" It's a nice occasion to have a drink, but Wendy, as usual, had her own way of looking at things and asking uncomfortable questions. So you brought a cake to celebrate. Explain. I still don't get it. We are going to celebrate the fact that now everything is in its place. Molly refused to a boarding house, and William is living with a new woman. Is that a bad thing? That's what let's rejoice in. In other words, Wendy clarified, we're celebrating that your son ran away, left his sick wife, and found a new woman. Do I understand you correctly? Miranda grimaced. Come on, Wendy, come on. Stop it. You're going to lecture me. What are you, a priest? Do you think it's better if my son sits by her for the rest of his life, or get a stroke from overexertion, and then either turn into a vegetable himself or die at 35? Is that better, do you think? In my opinion, Wendy clarified, it would have been better to wait until Molly recovered. And the doctors told you that she is not hopeless, and not to run to another skirt, who, by the way, is also not particularly clever. If your William ran away from Molly, left her helpless and sick, then what, he will not leave another. And you're still happy about it. You are just not a mother. Miranda screamed. You have given birth to children, but you have never learned how to be a mother, and you will never learn. You have no heart, because for a normal woman a child is sacred. He must be protected. It is a must. Wendy agreed. While he's a baby, yours is grown, and you haven't noticed. You keep running around, and he's a grown man to his mother. A child is always a child. It's only for people like you who were raised differently. And after that, you're on your own, like an animal, honestly. You feed him, teach him to hunt, and that's it. Get out. But a human being is not an animal, Wendy. Understand, it's finally a man who spends his whole life worrying about children. And then you thought of such a simple thing as the continuation of the species. Even if Molly still goes up, there's still 1,000 questions. Can she give birth? She's all beaten up, and a child has to be conceived and born. And if she can, will she have the strength to take care of the baby? Or do we pin that on William too? No, Wendy. I look at you, and I know what a friend you are to me. You only want to hurt my William. You've known him since he was a child. Molly is, of course, nobody to you. And you are worried about her, not my son. Miranda jumped up and headed for the door. If I am worried about Molly, Wendy remarked without getting up, it is because she is sick. She really needs help, unlike your William, a healthy moose and a grandiose coward. And you support that cowardice in him. Don't you know what motherly love is? Shouted Miranda back at her. Goodbye, friend. I have had enough of you. At parting, she slammed the door loudly. Fool. Wendy sighed and took the phone out of her pocket. Hello, Betty. Hello, dear Betty. Remember you told me about that genius doctor you work with now? I have a favor to ask of you. Could he see a patient? Her family sent her to a boarding school, but there seems to be some hope of recovery there. Please talk to him, dear. If necessary, we can even bring her in for an appointment. A year later, William hasn't shown up at his former apartment once in the past year. Miranda finally offered to sell it, or at least rent it to someone else. But William couldn't make up his mind. He felt that if someone moved in, it would be like that for good. All bridges would be burned, as if nothing had ever happened, neither Molly nor himself. The apartment was empty. William didn't even know if his mother was there. No, most likely. What would she do there? Only in his dreams did he still go back there, and for some reason he saw the ruin. Pieces of torn wallpaper were mixed in all the way down to the floor, and for some reason the floor itself was concrete with no covering. William found mountains of trash in the kitchen, broken windows in the rooms, and when he walked into Molly's bedroom, he saw his wife still lying on her bed. Only her hair had grown so long that it was falling over her eyes. Hello, Molly. He spoke softly and reached out to brush his hand away from his wife's face. But as soon as he touched that long, tried hair, Molly suddenly opened her eyes wide and dug into his hand with pleasure, her teeth sharp as a blade. William cried out, trying to wrench his hand from his wife's predatory jaws. He could hear the bones crunching on her teeth, and she murmured with pleasure like a giant, satisfied cat. Finally, he managed to wriggle out of running. Molly kept looking at him and smiling her bloody, senseless smile. After such dreams, William woke up clammy with cold sweat and couldn't figure out where he was. It didn't work out with Kate. For some reason, she was not happy when she saw him on the doorstep with the things. What's the matter? Dumbfounded, she asked. And then she was talking nonsense about how no one had agreed to this, and that it was all for shock therapy, and she was doing it for Molly. What kind of therapy? He asked. Kate, what's going on? Yesterday everything was fine, and today you're kicking me out. You should ask your mom about therapy. I was a fool to believe her under hypnosis. I wanted to ask her better. Ask her. Let her tell you everything. William didn't ask her anything. He didn't even tell her that Kate had kicked him out. All he could figure out was that his mother had made something up and convinced Kate that it was for Molly's benefit. Why? Most likely to convince him to leave his wife. The realization was painful. It turns out that Miranda had so diligently done him good that she had finally ruined his life. William made no excuses for himself. He was a traitor himself, and now he will have to live with that. But his mother really wanted this betrayal to happen. Day after day, she literally persuaded him to disown his wife. and it did not seem that she repented. William still continued to call his mother and even lied to her that he lived with Kate, but he couldn't help himself, spoke through force, and tried to wrap up the conversation as soon as possible. It displeased him to hear how satisfied Miranda's voice was becoming. When he talked about how he and Kate were going to the movies tonight, and yesterday they had been thinking about where they would go on vacation, his mother said that Molly was now living in a specialized boarding school where they were taking care of her. Well, that's good. William rented a studio apartment near downtown and decided he needed to get his act together and start a new life. I guess you could say he succeeded. He had a lot of free time again, and he could spend money on just himself. Sometimes there were even girls. None of them really managed to hook him, and he didn't want to, except for the nightmare, after which he could not sleep. Again, there was no denying it. William knew that this dream would probably never be denied. Molly, according to his mother, never recovered, and the doctors had lost all hope. He guessed she was lying. Miranda hated her. I would never ask her how she was, let alone visit her. But every time he was about to ask his mother for the address of the boarding house she was in, living, it was as if something was stopping him. It seemed that if he knew where to look for his wife, there would be no turning back. He would have to go and get her voluntarily, forced back into the old life, subject to a schedule, feeding, and medication. Most importantly, a dystopian eternal longing. William's life passed between nightmarish dreams, strange realities that at times were indistinguishable from dreams. He felt that his entire existence had become illusory, transparent, somehow unreal. He lived as if he were hiding from whom? From what? Who knew? One day, though, he decided to visit his wife. Miranda was in pain for a long time, but in the end, she gave her son the address of the boarding school where Molly had been placed. "Let me better call there myself and find out everything," begged her. "Why do you need all this trouble? Go somewhere, then go back. Molly won't recognize anyone anyway. I want to see her." Cut William off. "Give me the address. I'm going there anyway. Like you know, son." William went there the next morning. The private boarding school his mother spoke of turned out to be a regular one. The word almshouse fit here more than any other. Slammed corridors, upholstered chairs, and walls painted some dreary grayish green. There was a distinct smell of burnt gruel in the air. "You're a private establishment." William burst out. "What's going on here? Why is everything like this? Is it creepy?" The girl at the front desk laughed her head off. "We have very different patients here, young man. A lot of old people who can be affected by the luxury of the surroundings. Very depressing. Here, for example, such simple things as houseplants or shampoos in the bathroom. You know that a local sick person, for example, can easily drink shampoo and snack on a cactus. Such people are all the better off the fewer potentially dangerous items around them, and everything becomes potentially dangerous to such a sick person." "Stop it," William barked. "Just tell me that your management pocket the sponsorship money, and out of their own pockets don't want to pay for the upkeep of the sick too. Isn't that right? Don't talk back to me. And show me my wife immediately, if she's still alive, of course." "What is your wife's name?" "Cold," asked the girl. He said the name. The girl tapped the keyboard, and then looked up at William with confused eyes. "What's up there? Impatient?" he asked. "What room is she in, and who's taking her? What's the doctor's name? I need to talk to him." "And your wife was taken away, you see, because she was registered with us, but no one had any relatives. No one visited her. If you want, we can give you the address of a person you don't have to worry, please. He's a very good doctor, one of the best in town." "How was he taken? Why no family? What are you like?" "A complete stranger. I'm her husband. She has a mother-in-law. How could you give a man away to someone you don't know? And you didn't even tell me about it." "Yes, you understand that I'm judging you. But your mother, she signed the consent," said the girl. "Technically, she had to sign. And she didn't mind your wife being taken by a doctor. She said she was an old sick person herself, that she couldn't take care of Molly. And where to look for you? We didn't know. Your mother didn't give us your phone number. Nothing. The address, William said. And you have my word. I will sue you after all. But not now. I'll see you in court later. He liked the story less and less, and the explanation lay on the surface. His mother had stuck Molly in the first institution she could find, without even bothering to find out what the conditions were. What's more, Molly was listed in the local records as a single woman with no one. Technically single, and of course, old and sick. What was it like to have a mother-in-law and a perpetually absent husband? Yes, Miranda showed wonders of ingenuity. And so, when Molly took some of the stuff out of here, unknown doctor, he and William were not even informed about it. Miranda, not just the doctor, she would have given Molly to an ogre just to get rid of her. William was riding in a cab to the house of this unknown man, and he himself did not know what he wanted to think. To put up a fight. Strangely, least of all, William was now thinking about Molly herself. How was she being treated? Was she alive? All these questions had become secondary. The most important thing was who this doctor, whoever he was, had just come and brazenly taken what was not his. Molly was not his. He had no right to her. That's what the cab driver said, stopping the car near a fancy new building. Well, everything is clear, thought William, examining the facade. Panoramic windows, underground parking lots, a doctor who didn't spare any money for ponces. He glowered at the address, checked the apartment number, and went up to the right floor, the entryway. Here, too, were impressive paintings, hanging, crystal chandeliers, upholstered couches. Did anyone really like all that? William had never understood what all this luxury was for when ordinary light bulbs were enough to illuminate it. And sofas in the stairwell are idiotic. It's for the punks to sit comfortably, and these carpets are underfoot. They have to be cleaned and washed and cleaned and washed every day. Otherwise, in a week there will be so much dirt that the ornaments under it can't distinguish vases with fresh flowers. That's ridiculous. And for sure, for all these excesses need to pay, and quite a lot. But if people have nowhere else to put their money, why not? William, did a call come from behind him? He flinched and turned toward the voice. Still didn't dare believe his ears. Standing in the open doorway was Molly. "Was that you?" he asked, his mouth suddenly dry. The question was hoarse and indecipherable. "It's true. Are you Molly?" "Yes," I laughed. "Have I really changed that much?" "Though, of course, the last time you saw me, I was lying there. I couldn't even speak. But as you see, I was lucky." She stood before him tall, slender, and at ease, her hair thicker and fashionably trimmed. Her eyes filled with life again, and she was laughing and talking. "A wonderful doctor helped me. An aunt and friend of your mother's acquaintance. He picked me up from that boarding house and moved me to his place. After a week, I was able to move my fingers on my right hand. And then, so now I'm fine. I'll have to give up rock climbing, though. But that's okay, really. I'll do something else. How about you?" Mine shrugged. "I don't know what to tell you. You see what I'm like. You wanted to escape from the difficulties. It worked." Molly grinned. "Escape from hardship." "Yes," he confessed. "You can't run away from yourself. I am neither here nor there. Not in the past, not in the present." "Why is that, Molly?" "I don't know," she answered. "Did you have a choice to run or to stay? You chose, and that must be the price. How's Miranda's health?" "She's fine, I think. I haven't seen her in a while." "What are we going to do now, Molly?" "We're still married." "Not anymore," Molly said. "We were divorced a few months ago unilaterally. I did put this address where you live on the application. The notice didn't go out. I didn't know where to find you." "I see," William sighed heavily. Molly came out to meet me. William looked around and saw a tall man in his 40s or 45 getting out of the elevator. He walked tautly toward the woman, kissed her on the lips, and turned to William. "Are you the young man to see us?" "No," William shook his head. "I've just got the wrong address. I'm sorry." He staggered toward the elevator. He understood that there was nothing more for him to do here. Miranda was sitting alone at the set table. Champagne, guns in the fridge, and on the table was a store-bought chocolate cake with a single candle in the center. A birthday is a holiday to which you are supposed to invite guests, or at least the closest ones. But what if you have no friends or family? The only friend turned out to be a jerk. Unable to understand the anxieties of a mother's heart, and son William, learning from Kate what his mother had done, came to Miranda with a scandal, screamed that her brilliant plan was really the real meanness, that she was constantly dripping on his brain, persuading him to leave Molly, and then used the opportune moment to bullshit Kate. He didn't know what he was talking about himself. It was to the point of tears. It was a shame. She only wanted William not to ruin his life, not to become an exhausted caregiver to his paralyzed wife. But her son would not listen to her. He left and hasn't been seen since. He changed his phone number and could not get through from work. Maybe he left somewhere, but today, on her birthday, Miranda did not even receive a congratulatory message from her son. Everyone close to her betrayed her. She was turned away. And now she sits alone with champagne and a cake. But she does not want either of them and does not want anything at all. For a long time, Miranda dropped her head on her shrunken hands and burst into bitter tears.